Hello everybody, I'm Richard Gon of Work to Live podcast version. So this time I'm thinking of doing a small talk, or I'm thinking of finishing this episode for shorter times than ordinary episodes. So the title is so which countries are fine for immigration, and which is why. So I'm thinking of finishing this episode quite early, and that is because people know, well, immigrants or people who are thinking of immigration into other developed countries know some good candidates, or they know, those immigrants, or other potential immigrants, or those people who are thinking of immigrating into the other developed countries know good candidates for immigration, which is why. So I'm thinking of finishing this episode soon enough. And conclusion is it depends on the time and the era in the coming future. So for now, for example, so clear example is Ukrainian people, not Ukrainian people, but Ukrainian people. So if you'd like to, for example, temporarily avoid warring situations, or wars, or some kind of dangerous situations, like so terrorism attacks, or attacks from mafia, like in some Latin American countries. So if you have such purposes, and if you'd like to get for if you'd like to get brief shelters, or brief refugees, or so if you'd like to live in some places for a short time, or temporarily. So I think it's fine to go to any developed country, which is because so although this country, or I live in an East Asian country, I live in an East Asian country, which is a developed country in Asia, and I live in such a country. And for now, this country, although this country has a declining population, or the population of this country declines, but thinking about, I'm sorry for the buzzer, or the not buzzer, but the siren of, maybe this is a siren of ambulance, and maybe I don't know whether you can hear the announce of that siren, but actually that announce said an ambulance is passing, which is what that announce said, maybe. Anyway, so coming back to the not title, but the track of this episode. So choosing or thinking about where to immigrate, and this country is fine for if you are thinking of getting if you are thinking of getting some temporary residence, because this country has declining population, or the population of this country declines as time passes, which is a situation this country faces, or this country has. So thinking about such a thing, so this country is good for this country is good for giving you, or giving those immigrants temporary residences. But actually thinking about distant future, or not only thinking about the near future, but actually thinking about the distant future, like, so that how distant are those futures is, for example, if you're thinking of the future in 10, 20 years after, or 30 years after, or 40 years after, or 50 years after. So thinking about the future in, for example, this is an extreme instance, but actually thinking about the future in to the extent of late 21st century, or like, thinking, so in terms of the year, for example, if you're thinking about the future of, if you're thinking about the future after 2050, or 2060, 2070, 2080, for example, which are not the futures of 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years after, but actually, it's those 2060 and 2070 and 2080 are more distant years than 20 years after, 30 years, the futures of 20 years after, 30 years after, and 40 years after. Anyway, so if you think about such distant futures, so I think maybe infallible choices or how should I say, so safer choices are Western European developed countries like for example France, Germany, the Netherlands, Great Britain, and some Nordic countries. And if you include for example, and I don't know whether it's fine to call other options, but so for example Austria and Switzerland, and there are many advanced countries, or there are many rich European countries, and those countries are recommendable choices for you to immigrate into. Anyway, so those European countries are recommendable for immigration. And if you have I don't know if you live in a developing country, I don't know which country you live in, but actually, so if you would like to live in, for example, southern European countries like Italy, Spain, and Portugal, and if you'd like to live in those countries, so for example, in the case of Spain, that country had bankrupted. Well, that country bankrupted. Not bankrupted. That country bankrupt in the time of subprime loan problem happened in 2008. Maybe that problem, or the problem called or named subprime loan happened in 2008, as long as I can remember. Yeah. If you do not care of such a thing, or if you do not care of such a fact, and if you can ignore such a fact, it's fine to include southern European countries into the candidates, or into the choices of immigrations, or your choices of immigration. And so, and of course, Singapore. So if you're thinking about getting temporary residencies, so it's fine to immigrate into Singapore and South Korea, or Republic of Korea. But both of those countries have declining populations, and which means the populations of South Korea and Singapore decrease as time passes, or year by year. So thinking about which is why infallible choices are Western or developed European countries. And so of course United States can be a good option. But actually that can, so as people say, that can, the crime rates are really high in the United States of America, which is why I think I'd like you to think about whether it's fine to immigrate. It's fine for you to immigrate into that country or not. And so if you're thinking of immigrating into Canada and Australia and New Zealand, so if you're thinking of maybe thinking about, so if you'd like to choose infallible choices or infallible countries, which means, so in the case of developed Asian countries, they may how should I say, they may decline economically, or those developed countries, or those Asian developed countries may drop significantly in terms of economic performances. For example, such risks or such dangers exist in those Asian countries. So, but thinking about, for example, from now on, I'm going to talk about, so really far future. Like, so I said, so if you are thinking of the distant future, like 2060, 2070, and 2080. So if you are thinking of such far future, such far futures, for example, so I think you should check out the economic performances, or concretely speaking, or restrictedly, not restrictedly. Maybe So if you elaborately speaking, so you should check out. I would like you to check out the GDP per capita, which is what I recommend you are checking. So if checking the GDP per capita is what I recommend. So thinking about far futures for example, I'm recording this episode 2022, for example, so which means, for example, so 40 years after, 50 years after, 60 years after. Well, if you are thinking of the future in 22nd century, or if you are thinking of the future of the beginning of the 22nd century, if you think of such a future, you should check out the economic performances of India and China. So those two countries have really huge populations, which is why those countries may flourish in the far future, in the far futures, which is why, so if you are thinking of such far futures, you should include those two countries into great constellations for you. So I don't know, it's difficult to summarize what I have told you. So coming back to the title of this episode, so which countries are fine for immigration? So the conclusion is it depends on the time and era in the coming future. So for example, if you'd like to get temporary residences, or if you'd like to enjoy your own lives, and for 10 to 20 years, for example, so I think Asian developed countries are fairly good, and of course, so immigrating into some European countries is a good option. But actually, so Asian developed countries are fine, but Asian developed countries have some sort of dimming futures, which is why. So if you'd like to go to infallible countries where, well, which may have some degrees of economic performances, which are likely to have some degrees of degrees of high economic performances. So thinking about immigrating into infallible countries. So those countries are Western European countries. So anyway, but actually thinking about far futures, like so the 20, 40, 50 years after, I think 60 years after, and including the beginning of 22nd century. So I recommend you checking out the economic performances of India and China, which may become good candidates, or those two countries may become so prime choices, or best choices for immigrations. So in the far future, many immigrants come to want to, or many immigrants may come to want to immigrate into those two countries, which such a future may come in the future, which is what I speculate. And likewise, so where to immigrate? So the candidates, or the choices of the countries to immigrate are stuff like that, or as I told, what I have told you. So which is what I'd like you to know this time. So I'm sorry for my bad manner of finishing this episode. So that's it. Thank you very much for your listening. See you.